Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Right.
Now, where this ends up, I'm not sure. I've tried that before. It always ends up on whoever's meeting it is. It ends up at their.
No, this one goes to your local files, I think.
Okay. Well, that would be good.
Unless you did
After
it
the
from a
meeting's
cloud.
over, Diane, there will be like a little, like when you leave, there will be like a little thing that shows up that's basically converting the meeting into a file onto your computer. So you have to leave that open, and then
Yep.
it'll be there, and you can click like open it, and it'll show you the folder
Okay.
that it's in.
That's great. Thank you.
So maybe we should we just start with it with the plan and structure of the workshop, or where do you all want to start? I don't know. I'm not good at running meetings.
Well, there's something I wanted to say about that, and I don't know if it goes to this point, but so first of all, I just want to say, Lane, that I thought you were really splendid. And I'm very triggered by the coddling of things. You know how I feel about that, but I got some you were splendid. And I learned a lot. And also I realized for the first time, I think, the role of this kind of inner work for white people. And I saw it almost as pre-work, in that people maybe, it's almost they're at the beginning of their journey and they have to do all of this in order to even proceed to ground level, which I think is important. I just never saw that before in that way. But in terms of structure, my main issue, and it could be that I didn't understand what it was moving from the first set of questions and then the second one. I feel like the people didn't have time to digest and make change, to digest what was going on in order to like look back at their questions or their situation again in that second small group, to really come back with something different. And so when I went back to my small group the second time, I kind of shifted it around to allow them to speak, because in the end, they really didn't feel like they had tools yet to really look at their situation differently, whatever it is they had brought up. So anyway.
That's really important. I'm curious about other people's experience with that. Was that other people's experience in the small group? My small group, everybody in my small group had a drastically different experience. But so I'm curious how that was for others.
My group had two like seasoned process work people in it, so I don't think that they're a great sample set to pull from.
Oh, yeah.
Well, my small group might have had, I'm not sure who they were, but they were fully immersed in race consciousness. They were white. They were still really fully immersed and fully wanting the full spectrum of let's get on with it and let's do reparations. So they talked about reparations. They also talked about their own experience. There was a deepening that went from the first session to the second, and that when they came, but I thought it was a deepening that came because they reflected on what they said in the first session. And then when they came back for the second session, they said, okay, now I understand why I felt that way, or why I felt that way all these years. And then they were able to bring that up. So I thought it was largely because these were people who were there to do the work. And so they were good. Now, the only thing that the overall feeling that I had of the whole thing was, and if I were to plan to do something similar, I would say there probably isn't anything that we can cut out, but we just have to make it longer. So we just have to look at, okay, is it reasonable to try to squeeze it all into 3 hours? Or does it need to be a 2-day session half day, 2 days like that, or 2 days, 2 half days, because the only thing that I thought got left out was a lot of the what I think of as ground rules and the norms. And I think had we done more explanation of what we were going to do, we said, here it is, and we had the meditations and all the pieces were there, but around all those pieces, to me, needed explication. So, and I think that would have been helpful. So I just don't see how we do it in that time frame period. I think we needed more time. But it was good. It was good, Lane. You were good. We're just looking at this one. I thought it was so perfect for what it was for.
I appreciate all that feedback. Yeah. Mhm. How was that for you, Ray, in terms of the people in your small group? Did they have a different experience in the second time we did that, or
I don't
not?
remember anyone. Okay, so my brain does not hold this at so well, but I remember everyone wanting to share, appreciating the questions, having done some work to quite a bit of work. And there was me, two other white people, and one woman, oh, I don't even know the language. What should I call her? She was from South Africa, a Black woman from South Africa, a Black African woman. Is that how you say it? Who had a migraine, and she was having a hard time. So we tried to make space for her. And she was the woman who never opened her camera. So
But she then spoke in the large group, and
yes,
thought it
she
was
spoke in the
incredible.
large group.
Yeah.
She spoke more in the large group than in the small group.
Yeah.
She spoke a little bit in the small group.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. How about you, Sundiata?
In my small groups, we had some pretty decent conversation. At least the second one. Excuse me. The second one, we had a very good conversation. That's where I experienced, I think, a difference of opinion, because the European that was in the group felt like it was too much coddling, and the Moorish American in the group, I think they were pretty much pleased with how everything was moving. I don't think the European was not pleased, but she felt like she came there for a certain amount of development, and I guess where she was, she didn't see where it took. Now, what I saw was when you took them to church lane, you know what I mean? I busted up my shoes, and, you know what I mean? Started doing the chicken wing and whatnot. You were doing a good job. So I think it was necessary for certain people to go through those fires, you know, and everybody might not be at the same levels. So
By the
I
way,
thought it was very
Sundiata,
productive.
thank you. Sorry to interrupt you there. Sundiata, did that woman's name happen to be Eileen?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. She was a lady who lives down the street from me, the Eileen, and she's the one who every once in a while just put in the chat, call to action. She's like always, yeah. Anyway, I wish somebody had written, you know, that's not quite what we're doing here. We're laying the groundwork for call to action. Anyway.
Did you have a person who was in charge of the chat?
Irina was like commenting on what some of the chat was, which was very helpful. Thank you, Irina.
I mean, but you were assigned to that, Irina?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I
did
was,
some-
yeah.
okay.
Lane, can you let me, I just logged in from my computer. Could you let me into the meeting, please? Thank you.
Let you into, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see.
That's okay. Thank you.
I wonder, I ended up playing that role a little bit too. I like
Thank you,
would put
Lolo.
links in, and but I didn't like play like here's our response as the facilitation team, like kind of stuff in. That wasn't, I did witness like some responses to Eileen, basically somebody being like, what's the call to action you want? Like, what action do you want to call us to? I think I forget exactly what someone said, but yeah. It's funny, but there's actually some meetings that they intentionally shut the chat out, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't know if that's what we should be doing, but I'm just saying that to say like, the chat's an interesting
Yeah.
phenomenon that
it's a
exists
part of the
inside of
whole
this
thing,
way
yeah.
to meet, like we don't have a chat. Like if the chat existed in space, it would just be like me whispering in Sundiata's ear over and over again. People be like, what are you whispering to Sundiata? Or be
The other
like,
thing you
and
can
everybody,
do-
hey, I want to just say.
But you can actually use it. I mean, spend a little time with, okay, now let's focus on what's coming up in the chat. If you want to,
I mean,
if you want to catch those things.
yeah. I actually think it can be helpful to close the chat down and then open it up again. And I tried to use the chat. We tried to use the chat like that. Specifically asking after the debrief for people to write things down, or another time I like asked a question and about how other white people experience their white defensiveness and stuff like that. And I think that was a helpful use of the chat. Anyway, I don't want to get so yeah.
I have another thought about like
Please.
just debrief times.
Yeah.
I thought that the work with Marilyn was like the most powerful part of the workshop. The work with the woman and the second woman that you worked with in the middle. Yeah, I found it really, really powerful. And then I also noticed like there was something really juicy and exciting and I imagine challenging for some in the group, that it was so Christian. Like, so I, because I imagine there's diversity in the room around like orientation toward Christianity and something like that. So I thought that was really cool, actually, that was in the room, because I thought that was nice. I thought it was cool to have that. I wondered about maybe framing that a little bit, but that wasn't something I felt was super lacking.
No, I think that would have been really smart to frame. Yeah. Thank you for that feedback.
I got a question, Lolo. Lolo,
what?
why did you feel there was Christian persuasion?
Well, because Marilyn identified as a Christian and also spoke a lot about God and that sort of thing. She talked about it being from church and that sort of stuff.
Okay, I dig it. Okay.
Yeah, totally. And I guess I'm actually also especially saying that probably from where I live and the communities that I'm connected to, because I'm like in Portland, like one of the more secular cities of the US, right? So like I think here that might be a little more edgy than maybe in other places. Like, because I actually think that maybe isn't at all for other people. Yeah.
Well, I'm not Christian, but I wasn't offended.
Totally. And I actually want to say I'm not offended at all either, but I know that there's some pushback to what the Christian faith has done in this world that sometimes can rub people the wrong way when it gets brought up.
Yeah, this is true.
This is true, but you're right. Yeah. I don't think it was offensive how it got brought up, and I actually thought, but what I thought was so cool was that you did really meet her in that. That was why I was really excited, because it wasn't like, well, I'm going to shy away from that, but you actually like brought in like God coming through this other I thought that was great. So that made me really excited. And I almost like, I almost like would have loved like framing, like meeting the person in that, like in that space would have been cool.
I thought that was the best. What I thought was the best thing about that was the boldness that it takes for you to channel God, just to channel God. And so that really spoke to me, because we tend to hold back and not want to, it's coming up in us and we pull it back because, okay, that's too much. But channeling God is 100% all the way. So I like that. I thought that was a good model for facilitation.
I mean, I have to say that well, first of all, just to comment on what you said, Lolo, I think that that would have been really good, and that goes to Diane's point about time. You know, we had so little time, so I think that would have been great to like have a debrief of that work and to say, whoa, I made this weird choice about like talking to her so much about God. Like, why was I doing that? And what does that mean to meet somebody where they are and to use their own belief system to help them to go deeper into something? Like that would have been a great thing to do had we had time. And I totally agree with that. And you know, maybe even also to hear from other people, like we know what were other people's reactions to that and stuff. Um, and I just have to say that I think all of that channeling God, well, not channeling God, but talking to her about God was good. But the one time when I said God is talking through me, I wish I had said that in a very different way. I did not. I said, right now, I've maybe God is talking through me to you to say, you know, I
Oh, that
wish
was spot on.
I wish I had not. I wish I had not done that.
Why do you wish that?
Yeah.
That makes me not want to put it on YouTube.
See, Lane, that is the channeling,
That's right.
you know what I mean? When you open your vessel for something to come through, you can't control what's coming through all the time. And at the bottom of what we're dealing with is a soul issue. You know what I mean? People are losing their souls behind this bullshit that they're doing to other people. So what you're talking to is the real deal.
But I didn't have to say it's God talking through.
I feel you.
I didn't have to say it. And
Mhm.
and that's going to turn some people off that I did.
But Lane, you caveated it. You even said like maybe, and I think it's possible that, I mean, like you didn't say like, listen now, I am God speaking to you. You didn't like get high and mighty about it.
Well,
Also, Lane, you may be coming from your own religious background rather than the church background that you were trying to channel for that woman. So you might want to think that way instead of where you come from, which is Jewish, which I come from, and it's Jews. We never say that. But as you know what I'm saying, as the church woman that woman was, maybe you were in a different space.
Yeah.
But why would we think that we are not vessels channeling a lesson, a word, something that somebody needs to say? I mean, to me, that's the only thing that's going to really make a difference when we talk about making a difference. We have to remove and let ourselves be used, really.
I'm totally into and I was letting myself be used.
I thought it was perfect.
And I don't want to turn somebody off and then somebody thinks, "Oh, what's the point of that?"
Well, but that's the other half of the lesson. Some people get turned off. They're going to learn something by that. We can't take responsibility for what comes through us either. Not unless we're deciding in advance that we're only going to do a certain amount of things and we're going to shape it up to fit people's hearing it a certain way. That's when we get into problems, to me.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's what sitting in the fire allows.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
All right.
I wonder if Irina or Frank want to throw anything in the more general pool pot that we're making right now.
Well, just to go off of that, when we're talking about what turns people off and how some people were call to action, call to arms, and some people are trying to get their basic lessons in. I think we have to just look at what we did as a whole, and everything that we did is not going to be for every person, but they will be able to get something out of it, no matter who you were, where you were in your journey, whether you're a Christian, a Jew, an atheist, or whatever. You may not like everything, but you got something out of it. And I think that's the important part, because it was a general event that we did. It wasn't specifically aimed or tuned at one particular group, because we're just starting out. So we have to be able to give something to everybody. And I think we did a really good job of that.
Thanks, Frank. Irina?
I think that what came through for me was that you met this person where she was at. And I think that's really valuable because I think people think that they need to like be a certain way to be acceptable in race conversations or something like that. I think that's one of the confines. And I appreciated that she was open about what her experience was, and then you really supported that and met that. And I think that's very encouraging, so that it's about people coming from where they're at, which is inevitably actually what's happening, and feeling okay to then move in the right direction, you know? So in that sense, I think that's the larger feeling that I had. I loved how you flowed with it and were open to her experience. And I think that's the key thing.
And I thank you. And I have to say, I spent a few days like not sleeping after that because I was so upset with myself that I was being so pushy with both her and Jonathan. And I'm just curious. I get that criticism sometimes about being pushy. So I'm just curious what people's experience of that was.
Can you say more about what pushy looked like? Because I don't think I know what you're referring to.
You know, okay, now do this. Yeah, like I wasn't really following their experience as much as I was guiding them to an experience.
Lane, I think that was what we were doing. And from my perspective, we were providing excuse me, we were providing an experience for people so that they could delve deeper into their own psychological workings. They needed a guide, and you were being that guide. I don't see why you would lose any space about that, because one of the things is that, this is not really a tiddlywinks, kind of thing that we're dealing with. Is people's livelihoods and survival are on the line. We can't fool around too much, and you didn't. You know what I mean? I don't think you were being pushy. They came there to get an experience, and you gave it to them. We gave it to them, you know what I mean, as a group. So that was what you were supposed to do. It ain't gonna go perfect, but that's what it was. I think you did a great job. Also, and I'm gonna shut up after this, I appreciated the point in the presentation where you went through with that lady and you were telling her that these things are not for Black people to deal with. We have things of our own that we have to deal with amongst ourselves, and we have to do that. It's not on them. Get it up off of them. I appreciated that part, because I think that needs to be driven home. Everybody is poisoned by the waters of racism.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just want to say that with this event, we're the shepherds. I mean, we want people to come in and have an experience, but we also want to move them in the direction that they need to be getting to. So it's not just, come in, be organic, whatever happens, happens. It's like, no, we're here to get you to move in the right direction. And they're here for the same thing, or else they wouldn't have shown up. So we're definitely shepherding them towards where the world needs to be. So I think that's important.
Yep.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like I want to echo that and basically just be like, it's okay to have an agenda. That's kind of what this is about. And I mean, I think that the thing that's key is that, like, maybe with what you're bringing in, Diane, about length of time, like, I think that push maybe was felt even more because of the time being such that you needed to like really do a work that went deep in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that felt like it amplified this experience of the push, but I think the feedback was good from everyone that did it. Like, I didn't see anyone being like, okay, I guess I got to now do this thing that wasn't really authentic for me. I didn't see that happening. So I don't know. That's my thought about that.
I'm also connecting that to the small groups, because I think to your previous question, in the small group that I was in, I think we went deeper in the second time around, you know, and I think it's more challenging for people to connect to their bodies than to connect to their ideas in general in our society. So that was, I think, more of a process around that. But then I had a question for myself as a small group leader, like, do I want to be facilitative other than holding space and inviting, sharing and all that? Do I want to be like guiding people into anything, you know, to deepen? And we had a little bit of extra time. And I think I asked a few questions, but in general, I think for future, I sort of had this question, like, do we want to be doing any work there other than sharing? Yeah. And how much involvement does the facilitator, you know, have the space to bring in?
I think that's a great question. I think since we did have extra time, I think that would be great to facilitate some there, and to help, you know, shepherd people into a deeper experience. I think because we didn't know, you know, I think a lot of people didn't show up for the small groups, so we would have had, you know, four people in each small group, but they didn't, you know, they didn't do it. So and we thought we were going to be like this, you know, but yeah.
Can people not go to the small groups and then rejoin the main
Yeah, it seems like,
meeting? Oh,
I don't know.
Mine did.
is that-
Well, mine did, but we had small groups.
well, maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if that's the case. I was surprised by how few people there were in my small group, but
Yeah, there were only 2 or 3 people in
Only 2 in mine.
everybody's small group.
right. Anyway,
I had one more thought about the pushy like debrief, but I don't know if other folks want to share in response to that question. Okay. I kind of already said what I said about the pushy, but I think time would have been really key. And then the other thing that came up for me, like, you know, again, like what you're saying, Diane, more time. And with that, the thing that felt like an opportunity that could have been cool too with small groups is after the work in the middle, to have people be in small groups to reflect on what came up for them as they watched the work. Because one of the things that I think is really exciting, especially for white folks, is the way that they use other white folks to distance themselves from their own white experience. Like they'll watch someone do some work and they'll see them say something or do something or whatever that is to them annoying or disturbing or problematic. And then they like will sometimes, I'll do this too. I'll rely on my experience of like judging that person as a way to like not be as connected to knowing that experience in myself. And so I just see that as a potential opportunity too, to like work on like people's reactions, judgments, whatever, of the person that just did the work in the middle, or like even just like, you know, what came up. It doesn't have to be judgments. I think some people were really touched by it too, and it really did affect them, and like they felt really moved by it. But I'm sure that some others were sitting there with like, oh, this person so this or that, and that's like another place of work that can be really exciting too.
that's a little tricky, also, just in
Sure.
terms of like I'm not interested in protecting white people, like, you know, like I wasn't protecting Marilyn there, and yet I would want to protect Marilyn from some random thought or comment that other people were making about her work. I'm protective of people about when they're, you know, showing themselves in a vulnerable way and going into the unknown, like how that's framed, and, you know, anyway, so that we'd have to think about that carefully. I'd be interested in talking to you about that. If I like the basic idea, because I'm agreeing with everything you're saying about white people distancing themselves, and so if that were facilitated well in the small group, that would be a you know, that would be a place where it would be good to have tight facilitation in the small group.
Agreed.
The one place that I thought that for my group, I mean, we can all only talk about our own group, but for my group, we had more than enough time, and just in those 2 15-minute segments, we could have cut that back to 8 minutes, because then you just put that out there, and then, we had a lot of lag time just reprocessing what everybody just said unnecessarily. So it depends on what it is we're trying to get to. It's like we were talking about, if we're trying to get something in the group to understand or something, but if we're just giving people an opportunity to come out of themselves, it didn't take long, and they were done.
I think it could be either. And I think that's one of the things that we could do better next time on being better prepared. So, I mean, some of the small groups, it sounds like they spent the whole time processing, and some people were done and they're like, okay, what do we do next? So I think that had we had a better plan, say, okay, well, here's what we want to get to first. And then facilitators, if you have enough time and it looks like things are winding down, here's the next set of things that you could get to, so that we can use the time more effectively, just depending on, what your group is doing. Because it just seems like, we didn't have that plan B. So we had plan A, and some people ran through it and some people meandered, and then, we could cut it short, but then for the people that are meandering and having that experience, do we want to cut them off, right? Let go. So it just seems like if we had that backup plan, if you finish early, here's the next thing you can get into, and plan like a 3-minute thing so that we can fill that time better.
Mm-hmm.
Good idea, Frankie. You know what? One of the things we could do,
Yes, good idea.
if we could set up a like maybe a 1-minute video that deals with something that we're talking about. So if they run out of time, you can view the material, you know what I mean? And then that would at least have the minds jogging. And then when we come back to it, it's still on the same topic. So it's, even more. And now if you don't get to it because you're discussing things, then we use the time properly. But let's say like in my group, my first group, I had one person to talk and the other dude didn't want to talk at all. And then he bounced, so it was like, it was over real quick, like Diane said. So, if we had some material or something, it might have been kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Might be hard to, I don't know how to do that technically in a breakout room on Zoom to show a video, but.
Well, it could be a written piece, we could put up something and just, people could read it or something like that.
Or it can be something that that the facilitators know, so that, because we're all trying to bring something, help people bring something out. Could have been just one thing to say, well, how is this or how is that or something.
Right.
Or also just an instruction to go more deeply into what's been said, because people were just doing a one-time share. And then basically to structure the conversation in a certain way that goes a little deeper with what has already come out, rather than introduce, more questions, I suppose, is a thought.
That could work.
I guess.
And it could even be reflecting on what we've done on the whole process, and not necessarily here's your activity that we're going to do in a small group, but it could be a more general question of getting somebody's barometer of where they're at with the meeting so far, because we were an hour in before we had the first small group, so we had already covered a lot of ground. So we could have had some kind of guiding questions on what's your thoughts so far, just to get that more general conversation going.
Right.
I think that's important.
I mean, from my perspective, in this particular workshop, the small groups were so key because it was about processing or talking about those, for me, all important inner works about like what was your experience of white defensiveness, or what was your experience of somebody else having white defensiveness if you're a black person. And so, you know, for me, like deepening that, like Rhea said, would be would would be more important than kind of going back to the kind of theoretical thing about the workshop, and particularly after the second one, like if if somebody didn't have a, you know, if somebody was having the same experience after those inner works, I'm curious, were they doing the inner works? I mean, I saw while Jai was reading the Earth Spot exercise, and while Irina was reading those other things, I saw the chat like still happening, and so, you know, that I also wonder about that stuff.
Lane, I think that's a good, when you mentioned earlier, there can be a time where the facilitators can turn off the chat, so that people can concentrate on the data. You know what I mean? Then when there's time that we might want to pass that, you know, people's information on and things like that, and we can able it, you know. But to disable, I had to do that in school as a teacher, because the kids, they love to talk about different things. So, you know, when there's information that you need to know, we turn off the chat.
So did you do that in Zoom so you can just like disable it and then re-enable it?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that you can do that. That's cool.
Yeah, Zoom can do a lot of stuff, and it helped a lot in teaching.
Of course, because otherwise they're just talking in the background the whole time.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, Sundiata, if what we're trying to do is keep our eye on the whole picture,
yeah,
what happens is that if people are occupied, not paying attention, that tells us something. And so then if we do something else and people now are paying attention or doing the exercise, that tells us something else. So just cutting off the chat,
right,
that doesn't tell us anything about what experience people are having. That just tells us that we just took our rank and cut off the chat. That's all it says.
Yeah, but I still want to stand up for that. I think sometimes I actually do think I was, you know, over at Animal Leadership, Shakil Chaudhary, his organization up in Canada, they do amazing work with diversity and stuff like that, and not just and stuff like that, with diversity work, and they are very clear about the chat is off now. Now we're going to turn on the chat and we're going to use it for this. Now we're going to turn off the chat again. And I think that that's a wise use of leadership personally.
But what does that tell us about people's
yeah.
internal experience though? Nothing.
Yeah, we kind of lose that.
But then it makes me wonder, Diane, that you bring that up. How do we find out about that experience? I mean, we don't know why people don't want to listen to something. Do you know what I mean? Unless we'd have to ask, I think, or I don't know. You'd have to collect data on it because there's so many different reasons people turn things off, you know?
Yeah. And one of the things that we used a feedback tool, that free one, SurveyMonkey. It didn't, at least I couldn't figure out a way to get text comments without paying for it. So we had the opportunity to do multiple choice only. And so what we could see by that is of the vast majority, just say 12, just say we have 15 people who responded. 12 people gave a 5 all the way across. They were there, they thought it was great, but they want to come back. And maybe 3 people were real middle of the road. It was okay, you know, they may come back or not. So that gives you a sense, not of the detail. And so what that means to me is, and I'm working with Mina to develop the Google Forms where we can get that written response. And that's how we can do it. We can ask about the different segments and see what people say. That gives us only a certain amount of feedback. Doesn't mean that what we did wasn't good or bad. It just means that that person, for whatever reason, liked it or didn't like it.
Keeping up on stats and things, that does help. I don't want to flip flop on what I said earlier, but after thinking about it and listening to what you're saying, Diane, you know, and I think Lolo said something earlier about a lot of those the things that people put in the chats sometimes are on the spot reactions to what has been said, and they may not have a chance to say something in the forum. They want to get it out of their mind, and you know, and then the facilitator can go back and touch it later. So it is a double-edged sword. Like if you turn off the chat, you might miss those interactions. If you know, so I don't want to flip flop. I'm just saying it has its pluses and minuses.
I think I agree with what you're all saying, and I think part of it is a time issue, and part of it is a facilitation issue, and they're connected because we didn't have any wiggle room in terms of time, and then if you are going to have that on and you're going to use it in that way, then there needs to be times when the person who's monitoring the chat says, whoa, let's check this out. This is going on in the chat. Maybe we should address this in the workshop and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's a way to use the chat as a facilitation tool, which I personally haven't done as a facilitator, but I know people do. So I have another piece of feedback about the workshop that I have for myself, which is that I think I think well, actually I'm curious about this because one of the things that we ended up changing was or we ended up building in was, you know, if you're a white person, these might be the different ways that, you know, you have been defensive and now feel that in your body and stuff like that. And then if you're a black person or another person of color, you know, remember a time where you know, somebody was being defensive toward you and or you witnessed white defensiveness and what that did in your body. And it would have been really good, maybe, to unfold some of that as well and to give Black people a chance to deepen with that experience. And so I'm just curious from the Black folks who are here and also from the small group facilitators who had Black folks in their group, was that helpful to kind of, you know, to go into your experience of white defensiveness and to, you know what I'm saying?
Elaine, that's a good question. As a black person, and I'll speak to the coddling also. This was geared toward white people. That's a double-edged sword. I'm not really interested in gearing anything else in our public forums that we're doing for white people. I think that we can get to the same information without that feeling of coddling white people. Now, I'm just speaking for myself. I'm just as a Black woman looking at something called white defensiveness. You have Black people there, and everything is about how do these white people feel. So I think that we could, as I've looked at this, I've started really looking at these questions, and I see things on a spectrum, and I see defensiveness on one end and aggression on the other. And I don't see Black people being any more or less defensive and any more or less aggressive. It comes out in different ways around different topics. White people too are totally aggressive. Maybe they do it in a passive aggressive way, still aggression. So I think we could talk about that spectrum of things we want to unfold from passive, from defensiveness to aggression. And I don't think we have to say white people or Black people. I think we can draw it out and see where is it? Let them identify. Okay, now how is this coming out? And then it could be, okay, do you feel defensive about that? And then you see, okay, now you're going after somebody by the throat. Does that feel like aggression? And so I don't think it's one group or the other that feels any less of either one of these things any more than people are not on a spectrum from Black to white and everything in between. And so everything's on a spectrum. I don't think we need to coddle or bring out or centralize one or the other. I wouldn't want to do it with Black people that I'm thinking about either, which is on the public arena. Now, if we want to get into some private groups that are all white and want to do it, that's a whole different thing. Then we're paid to come in and do this work, or they're all Black and they want to look at Black issues. So that's my unbiased thought.
Yeah.
I got a little lost, Diane, in there, but I'm not sure. You were talking about aggression and defensiveness. In my group, and I just remembered this because you brought the question in. When the Black African woman spoke, who was living in Belgium, she was freaked out. She was crying. She expressed her suffering at the hands of, white unconsciousness, basically. And, it was strong. And the rest of us who were all white listened and tried to hold that, and we weren't supposed to interact much. So it was a little, we just held it. And just to say, after that, it was hard for, I think, the white people to talk about any kind of, it was so not on that scale, right, of suffering, that it was hard to then go and say that we were the same. Oops, sorry about that.
I think, go ahead,
Anyway,
Ray.
just wanting to bring in that happened.
Yeah.
I think by listening to what she just said, Raya,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me as far as if we're going to talk about people's perceptions of different situations that they've had or whatever, and how do they feel and this and that. It does greatly, there's a big difference in how, on one side of the fence, on the other side of the fence. And it does tend to get emotional on both sides, but it's a very big difference. So yeah, I think there should be some kind of thought to that. I don't know what we should do about it necessarily, but because we do want to foster communication, conversation. But yeah, if we're like Diane said earlier, if we're trying to focus on like Lane does process work and our process work, some of that stuff, a lot of that stuff should be done privately, because then people can be real. You know what I mean? If we doing stuff publicly, if we have it out there that this is about white, white, I'm trying to remember. Thank you. If it's about white defensiveness, if it's about something specific and we're focused on that, then that's the forum for that. I don't for me, I didn't think you were coddling. You know what I mean? I felt like that's the work that was being done. Now, in a public forum that was not dealing with that specifically, that could have been seen as coddling, and I
definitely.
probably would have said the same thing. You know what I mean? But in that forum, it was on time.
Mhm.
It's a healing session.
Yeah. So I'm thank you, Sundiata and Ray. I'm thinking about what you said, and
Mhm.
of course it's easy to do it not being in that group. Uh, but in the moment, I'm thinking if I had been in that group and I had had the idea that I'm having now, I think after Nonti spoke,
Mhm.
it would have been possible to go back to the white people who were there and say, yeah, I we all hear the suffering that white people impose upon black people.
Mhm.
And part of that suffering, at least part of that suffering, is from our defensiveness. So that
Mhm.
makes it
Definitely.
even more imperative that we go on and work on your defensiveness. I know it's hard for you to do that right after she speaks, but it's even more important to do it now. If we don't, then she's not going to be able to see that white people are trying to work on this stuff.
Well, I like that. I mean, that wasn't the directions
Right.
for that
And
little
not the time
group,
frame.
but I think that's a good idea. But if we could, add that in, great.
I have to leave in 5 minutes, just an FYI, folks.
Okay,
Right.
I like that. I like that idea, Lane, because so I kind of flip-flopped on how I was feeling because
Two flip-floppers.
yeah, I'm a flip-flopper. One of the things, Rhea, where you described, and you have a Black woman in the group and she's emotional and expressing and feeling and suffering. I have a fundamental problem with that, only because that is what Black people, as a general rule, say that they don't want to do. And I can understand that because we're always the ones, and I felt the same way, and I said it when we did the redlining whole piece. Here, I don't want to put on a show so that we have white people watching and like absorbing the emotion around Black suffering. But then what Lane said, he said, so this would have changed it entirely. He said, what if I had said, or if he was a facilitator, he had said, okay, what you just said, we're here to deal with defensiveness, white defensiveness. It's here, it's up. So let's do that. That would have, to me, I don't know how I would have felt as the person suffering, but as a person looking in, I would say that's a good use of suffering. Have the white people deal with their own stuff, not her stuff.
Exactly.
Well, just to say nobody dealt with her stuff, but we didn't put a lot of focus on her. It was just holding it and then going on. But
right.
I think it's a good idea, but it has to then, the small facilitators are then sort of, how do you say, charged with not only, supporting a sharing, but also facilitating a little bit.
Well, I mean, for me, that's just a way of then the facilitator then framing what's happening. It's just a frame.
Well, it's a frame and then also a direction to the white people. So it's not
Which,
just.
but that was the direction. But
Yeah,
that was the direction that the small group was for anyway. It's like, so framing what she said in terms of the group.
Oh,
so
right.
that
I got you. Yep. Putting it in in the directions of the whole.
Yeah.
The other thing that's coming to mind.
I got that. That's good. I like that.
Hold on just one. Jordana, I haven't heard from you much, and that's unusual. Wondering what you're thinking there.
So I wanted to apologize. I'm dealing with the possible purchase of a house.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm trying to listen, and then I'm trying to
Okay.
and I'm dealing, and it has to be this evening. So
Oh,
I really
okay. Yeah, yeah,
apologize.
yeah.
I know it's rude,
Okay.
but that's why I haven't been talking. And
Okay.
now
Whose
I'm trying to
house?
catch up. So
Your
did
house.
you have
Your
a specific question though, Lane? Like,
No. I always appreciate your point of view.
I mean, the only thing
And
I was gonna say about Noti was, and Diane, I hear what you're saying. Well, everyone's saying, we need to deal with our stuff as white people, and we don't want to be, and I've told Diane this, one of the things about having Black people talk about their suffering is those of us sit around and again, and like maybe Lolo was referring to, is we want to separate ourselves from the so-called bad white people, and we're sitting listening to this emotion. And I don't like that feeling, and it shouldn't be about them. It needs to be about us, and we need to be in the circle suffering and doing our work as coming from a really brutal group of people overall. But I was thinking of Noti saying, maybe she said, this is an opportunity for me to say what I want to say to white people, and that we don't often get those opportunities either. It might be a safe space for Black people to really light into us and get things off their chest. And that could be important also.
Wow.
So anyway.
That's a great framing, Jordana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lolo, I know you got to go, and I know you have something else to say, and I just want to say to you, man, come and join our team.
You got to do it. We're talking.
Me and
because
Diane
you
are
know
going to
why?
chat next week.
You know why?
'cause-
Because we're theater. What else are we but a theater?
That's right.
Ray is also a theater person. Rhea.
Yes,
Rhea's got her hands full.
Mhm.
Rhea's got her hands full.
Wait, are
Okay.
you saying we're being performative? Because that's not good.
Yeah. What the heck? No, it's cool. I'll be chatting with Diane next week, and yeah, thank you. Thanks for the invitation, Lane.
Yes, Lolo.
Much love to all
I've
of
been
you.
waiting 4 years for you.
Oh my God.
It's really sweet
Summer
to
of
reconnect.
Greece.
Yeah, I know. It's been a long time. All right. Much love to everybody.
Thanks,
Sorry
Lolo,
to
for
hop
all your
out.
contributions.
Bye.
Blessings, y'all.
All right, friends. Any last thoughts, feelings, feedback?
Can we summarize the takeaway from the discussion that was just had around Black people sharing their experiences? So it was about framing, 'cause I think that is a really complicated thing as a facilitator. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's a direction to consider for sure.
It's very important.
Mhm.
Are you referring to Black people being able to speak freely and angrily in those spaces to us as white people?
I don't know, no, whatever people want to bring in. Just I think the conversation was about, like, in different groups, there were different configurations of people in different ways that people shared. So, and then anyway, I think I just wanted a framing around it or something. We just said.
I think the framing that I'm taking away is that if a Black person like Nonti did in a mostly white group is sharing something, has chosen to share her pain or her upset, then that needs, we didn't talk about this, but that needs to be framed. That isn't that what usually happens, right? And then, like Jordana said, but it's not just for her to be talking about that. Like, we have our own work to do, and so, and what I said, how I framed it was also, she's talking about the pain that she has dealing with white people where she lives. And I know that one of the reasons that pain comes up is because of white defensiveness. And we're here to work on white defensiveness. And so let's talk about our own part in her pain, like how we contribute to that, how we get defensive. And let's not leave her with all the feelings. Let's talk about our feelings about that.
I think it would be really helpful to write that down, Lane, actually, and because I think it's good. I think it's a good direction, and it takes a little bit of as in process work, the term meta skill. I think it takes the right attitude so that you don't make the white people more defensive, but you encourage them to work on themselves for, to hold up our end of the deal here, so to speak. And that idea that, we have feelings too, and let's work on those. Don't leave, I like that, don't leave them all for her.
Yeah,
For
and
that
we've got
Yeah.
this recorded, so we can manage, we can
Yeah,
do
I
that.
think it'd be good to talk about that a little more.
Yeah, I think what happens then, Rhea, from what you said, it's not, what do we feel like as white people looking and feeling into the feelings of this Black woman? No,
Right.
that's the problem. It's
Right.
how do we feel as the ones that are participating and do?
Yes,
How does
yes,
that feel?
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yes, it's like looking at my favorite worst thing is looking at a lynching and focusing on the man hanging from the branches instead of looking at the faces of the
No, absolutely,
children
Diane.
being carried on the shoulders of
Yes,
these white parents and
Yes.
looking up and laughing about as they
Yes.
cut pieces off of this man.
yeah,
And so it's looking at that. That's where we focus
Yeah.
our awareness.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
what I meant, holding up
Yeah.
our end of the,
Yeah.
our end of
Yeah.
the situation.
And
Well, it's really only, it's not even our end. We're the only end. Like we're it. And we need to stop focusing on all these studies and all this. We know all the horrible things that have
Oh,
happened.
yeah.
And whenever you read all the studies on real estate, you're like, it's almost like these things it's all passive, like these things are happening to Black people, but like who's doing it? And no one shifts the lens over there to who's
So that's a
doing
good
it.
way to put it, shifting the lens
Yes,
back
Right,
to
it's
ourselves.
like stop
I like
looking,
that.
stop
That's
spending
helpful.
money
It's
on,
clear.
right. It's like, stop spending money. We all know about the wealth gap. We know about everything we need to know is out there. And we need to start looking at white people. And like Diane used that, I think
Very
about, all of the white people throwing vitriol on children, integrating schools, or even in Boston in the 80s, all those white mothers throwing stones and screaming at children on buses. Like I look at their faces. I'm not looking
Yeah.
at the other faces because that's all we've ever done. And then as white people, we are either perpetrators or we're beneficiaries. We're not, we can't be anything else. We're perpetrators or we're beneficiaries of the system. So either way, we're all complicit to a point. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I would add one thing, that in process work, one of the things that Arnie hammered home to me again and again when I was learning process work was, how is the dream happening in the moment? How is the dream happening in the moment? The dream is the basic pattern that we're working on, right? So if the dream in this workshop was white defensiveness. So if this Black woman starts to talk about her own pain, my mind always goes to, how is the dream, how is the white defensiveness happening in the moment? So I could imagine turning to the white people. This is a slightly different idea than the one I had before, but turning to the white people and say, now notice as she is talking, your own defensiveness listening to this. And that defensiveness may show up in terms of, oh, you're thinking, oh yeah, those Belgians are so racist. right? Or your defensiveness may show up by, oh, what am I supposed to be feeling right now? Or your defensiveness may show up as, oh, I don't know what to say. Oh, I can't. I shouldn't have a feeling about what she's talking about. Oh, or I'm just thinking about her feeling instead of mine, right? Like that would be like addressing how the dream is happening in the moment.
All good ideas. I'm gonna have to go soon. I have something at client at 4:30.
Thank you all so much for.
So it's all recorded. Are you going to like, I don't
I
know,
can send the recording to everybody if they want
send a
it.
recording? Yeah, I think there's a lot of good ideas in there.
Yeah, okay. I'll send the recording. And there are some, I'll send it to the 12 facilitators. Is that what
Yeah.
is that what I
Wow.
should do?
Sure.
Okay.
By the way, I just want to say, Nonti, after the workshop, emailed me and invited me to teach together with her and Robin DiAngelo,
Oh,
Cute.
God.
which unfortunately I had to turn down because it's the same weekend as our November 6th race retreat.
Oh, my God.
She
That's
she
so
wanted
sad.
she wanted me to do this. She wanted me to do this same workshop that we just did, but it would have just been
God,
too much.
Lane, you almost have to do it.
I already told her no. She's like,
Oh, my God. What an experience that would be.
well, I mean, it wouldn't be with Robin DiAngelo, just on the same bill, the same weekend as Robin DiAngelo.
So you'd be like the opening act.
The closing act. It would be
The closing act.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, cool though.
I think, yeah, it would be an amazing thing to run this workshop with like a different group of people.
Yeah.
I think you should do it.
Would you be in, Irina?
I can support. Yeah. I mean, I just think it'd be so good to take it outside of our group. Our
Yeah.
group is wonderful, but
Well, she said we can do it another time if it's not going to be that weekend. But I think she was disappointed that it's not going to be that, because I said, well, I don't know about that weekend. She's like, oh yeah, well. And then I said, because
Can it
we
be on
could do it
Sunday?
later. And she's like, yeah, we could do it later, but it really would be better if you would do it on Sunday.
By the way, just so you guys know, this week is Truth and Reconciliation Week in Canada. It's the first time they're doing it. So there's all of these events going on, and it's going to be, there's something tonight, like all through, I think, yeah, for the next 7 days. And it's based on the Truth and Reconciliation report that was put out 6 years ago. And it's their first, so September 30th is the day.
Wow. Wow.
And it should be really interesting. It's related to Indigenous people and the residential schools in particular.
Which recently have gotten a lot of.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to find thousands and thousands of children's bodies. It's already expected.
Yeah.
And in the States, they're going to start digging around and finding them there as well. So yeah, it's going to be, excuse my language, a shit show.
Wow.
So anyway.
Well, thank you all.
Just more fun times, guys.
Well, you know what? That is why we're doing this work, heading in a direction. We're being compelled. And when we get to where when we do, it'll be time for us to be prepared, and we'll be prepared.
Yeah. All right.
Diane,
Thank you, Lane.
Diane, I just want to say that what you just did there is what I was talking about. Like how to take what somebody says, some heavy thing somebody says, and then focus us back where we're going. You just did it.
Okay.
All right, friends. Diane, you want to turn off the recording? So
Okay.
that you have it?